For 35 years, I scrubbed floors, baked bread from scratch, and paid every bill in the home my son eventually grew up in. That house was more than walls. It was memory, labor, laughter, and prayer. When my body began to slow down and I asked if I could stay with him during recovery, he looked me in the eye and said, "You're too old for this house, Mom. You should be somewhere smaller." Smaller. He meant out of the way. So I moved out. But I didn't hand him the keys. I gave the house to someone who never once made me feel like I'd expired. My name is Gloria May Dillard, and for most of my life, the kitchen table was my command post. I raised 3 children in that narrow blue house on Hawthorne Street, the one with the slanted porch and hydrangeas out front. My husband, Walter, died young. Heart gave out before 50. So it was me who picked up the weight and carried it from one decade to the next. That house? I bought it with sweat. I paid the mortgage while ironing clothes for other people's families. I fixed leaky pipes with money saved in coffee tins. Every crack in the wall held a story I could still hear in my sleep. My youngest son, Aaron, was always bright, quiet, thoughtful, the kind who listened more than he spoke. I gave him everything. I had second-hand textbooks, home-cooked meals every day, shoes bought half a size up so he'd grow into them. He got a scholarship, left town, became a financial advisor, and started dressing in crisp shirts that smelled like boardrooms and ambition. When he came back after years away, he said he wanted to help out. I was touched, even hopeful. He offered to modernize the house, update the wiring, and repaint the trim. "It's your legacy," he said. I believed him. I signed a few things without thinking too hard about them. Power of attorney, property oversight, because I trusted my son. But time has a way of showing you what paperwork can hide. It started small. He'd visit less. He'd talk more about downsizing and retirement communities. Then one evening, after I slipped on the stairs and fractured my wrist, I asked if I could stay with him for a while. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. He said, "You're too old to be in a house like this, Mom. It's not practical. You should be somewhere quieter, smaller. You'll be more comfortable." But that word comfortable sounded like a closing door. I packed my bags without arguing, but I didn't leave empty-handed. I left with clarity. And I took back something far more valuable than any room in his house, my right to decide who I called family. I didn't leave that house with bitterness in my heart. I left with focus. Aaron thought he was being logical, efficient even. He saw me as a file to be moved into the later-in-life cabinet. But what he failed to see was that I hadn't just lived in that house. I built it, brick by brick, choice by choice, sacrifice after sacrifice. And I still had one final decision to make. I moved into a small assisted living apartment, not because I couldn't live alone, but because it gave me space to think, space to breathe. The place was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you remember who you were before people started telling you what you couldn't do. And in that silence, I started reviewing every paper Aaron had once helped me sign. That's when I found something, a clause buried in the document, stating that while he had temporary oversight of the property, final ownership had not yet been transferred. The house was still legally mine. Every wall, every window, every nail in the floorboard still answered to my name. And suddenly, I knew exactly what to do with it. I didn't tell Aaron. I didn't even call him. I called someone else, Monica. A young woman who used to live down the street with her mother before the bank swallowed their home during the recession. Monica had grown up around my kitchen. I used to give her leftover cobbler and help her with math homework at the table. She now worked 2 jobs, raising a daughter of her own. One visit, one look around her cramped apartment, and I saw the same fire in her that once burned in me when I had 3 kids and no blueprint. So I did what no one had done for me. I offered her the deed. No strings, no loans, just a simple condition. Fill it with the kind of love that doesn't age out. Her eyes filled instantly. She tried to refuse, but I smiled and said, "Don't make the mistake I did. Don't think you have to earn what you already deserve." She moved in 3 weeks later, painted the walls a soft yellow, planted new hydrangeas out front. And when I visited, the air didn't smell like resignation. It smelled like hope. The home lived again, not because of money or design, but because someone finally walked in and honored what it was meant to be. A shelter, not a trophy. Aaron didn't find out until the following month when he tried to schedule another contractor. He called me, furious, saying I'd gone behind his back. I told him I simply stepped out from under his shadow. "I'm your mother, not your property," I said calmly, "and this house was never yours to give. It was mine to leave, with intention." The phone didn't ring for 3 days after I told Aaron the house was no longer his to touch. Then, just before noon on the 4th day, it buzzed, not once, but 6 times in a row. Calls, texts, voicemails, all from him. He was unraveling. The calm, suit-wearing son, who always measured his words, suddenly had too many to say. But I didn't pick up. I wasn't being spiteful. I was still. Because sometimes the best response to a person who only sees your use is silence. Let them sit in the absence of your labor. Let them feel what it's like to reach for your hands and find only air. That evening, I listened to one voicemail. His voice cracked more than once. "Mom, I don't understand. After everything I did to help you, why would you give our family home to someone outside the family?" That word, our, it stuck in my throat. He didn't mean it. He meant this. He meant the house he'd already pictured as part of his portfolio. He meant the walls he'd once said were outdated now suddenly represented legacy. But legacy isn't built on entitlement. It's earned through care. And he had offered none. I went to visit Monica again that weekend. The house looked different, but not in a way that erased what I'd built. Rather, it evolved it. The kitchen still smelled like cinnamon. Her daughter, a soft-spoken little thing with bright eyes, showed me a hand-drawn picture of the backyard. "We planted strawberries," she said proudly. "It's going to be a garden." I smiled so wide it hurt. That's what it was always meant to be. Not a museum for someone else's ego. A living place. Monica had repainted the porch swing, the same one where Aaron once sat with skinned knees and big dreams. Now it held a different kind of hope. Not nostalgia, but a future. Something real. She offered me tea, the same chipped mug said I left behind, and we sat in silence that said everything. There was no performance, no parade, just peace. Aaron finally showed up at my new place 2 weeks later. No warning, no appointment, just a knock on the door. He looked tired, older, like the weight of realizing who he'd become had finally settled on his shoulders. I let him in. He sat at the edge of the couch like he wasn't sure if he was welcome. I didn't offer food or fuss. I just waited. Eventually, he spoke. "I thought I was doing what was best for you." I nodded. "You were doing what was easiest for you." He winced, and for once didn't argue. "I really didn't think you'd just give it away." I leaned forward, hands folded. "Aaron, you gave me the gift of seeing how little I meant to you once I became inconvenient. All I did was return that clarity with a decision of my own." He looked down. "She's not even family." I shook my head slowly. "She is now. Not by blood, but by gratitude. And that's a kind of loyalty you can't inherit. You have to live it." He didn't cry. He didn't beg. But something broke open in his expression. Pride, perhaps. Or maybe the version of himself he thought would be untouched. "I was going to flip it," he admitted. "Sell it for something newer." I stared at him for a long moment. "And that's exactly why you were never meant to have it." Then I stood, opened the door, and let the wind say what I no longer needed to. That night, after Aaron walked out my door with more silence than he had entered with, I sat alone with the echo of his footsteps still hanging in the hallway. There was no pleasure in what had happened, only confirmation. Confirmation that I had done the right thing, even if it looked wrong to others. People forget that mothers are human, that after decades of giving, sometimes we want to be chosen, not just tolerated. What hurt me most wasn't that Aaron didn't offer me space in his home. It was that he never asked me what I needed. He just decided, assumed, moved the pieces around without ever stopping to ask if I still wanted to be part of the board. But now that I had taken back the one thing that proved I had value, my home, I could feel the old strength coming back. Not loud, not hard, but steady. The kind that comes from being aligned with your own truth. In the days that followed, I received a few calls from relatives who had heard about the situation. Some tried to be diplomatic, others hinted that I had overreacted. One even asked, "But wouldn't it have been better to keep it in the family?" I didn't explain myself, because when someone believes your worth is conditional, there's no explanation that will satisfy them. Instead, I returned to my garden, my new one on the third-floor balcony where the sun hits just right in the morning. I tended my herbs, watered my basil, and thought about how many women never get the chance to reclaim their power, how many mothers are quietly waiting to be appreciated again, and how many won't ever hear thank you, let alone see justice. I had seen mine. I had lived it. Monica called one evening, just before sunset. She said the neighbors had come by with baked goods, that they had all been surprised when she told them who gave her the house. "They said you were one of the kindest souls on the block," she said, "that your house always had light in the windows. I'm just trying to keep that glow going." I smiled into the phone. "You don't have to try. It's already there." And it was true. Sometimes when you plant kindness in the right soil, it grows long after your hands have let go. That house had grown beyond me. But in a way, it was more mine now than ever before. For the first time in years, I was waking up without dread. No tightness in my chest, no pressure to prove anything. Just light filtering through the curtains and the smell of fresh coffee brewing in my own kitchen. The peace wasn't loud, it was in the small things, the sound of my slippers on the floor, the way I hummed without even noticing, the simple fact that no one was monitoring my presence. I had become my own again, no longer reduced to a role, no longer a burden wrapped in obligation, and as days went by, that peace deepened. Monica would call often, not out of guilt, not to impress, but just to check in. Her daughter had started calling me Miss Gloria, and that alone warmed something in me I thought had gone cold. They invited me over for dinner on Sundays. Nothing fancy, just good food, easy conversation, and respect served at the table alongside every dish. Aaron didn't call for a while. I wasn't counting the days, but I noticed. His silence no longer hurt. It simply confirmed what I already knew. That absence reveals as much as presence. And still, I didn't close the door in my heart completely. I just stopped leaving it wide open for someone who didn't know how to knock. I used that energy elsewhere. I began teaching a baking class at the community center, just once a week. A few ladies, a few teenagers, flour dust in the air, and laughter echoing through tiled walls. They asked about the old house sometimes. I just said, "It's in good hands." And I meant it. Because legacy isn't about names on mailboxes. It's about memory, warmth, a place where someone's spirit still lingers, even if their body has moved on. One evening, I got a letter, handwritten, from Aaron. No apology, no excuses. Just words that felt real. I don't know what I expected, but I realize now that what I wanted from you, I never earned. I hope one day we can talk. I folded it neatly and placed it in my drawer. Not because I needed it, but because it was honest. And that's where all healing begins, not with grand gestures, but with truth. That night, I went to bed smiling, because I hadn't just reclaimed a house, I had reclaimed myself. About a month after Aaron's letter, I received a knock on my door. Not a delivery, not a neighbor, It was him, standing there in jeans and a collared shirt, holding nothing but his own hesitation. His eyes met mine, and for a brief second, I saw the boy he used to be, the one who ran to me when his knees were scraped and his pride bruised. But he wasn't that boy anymore, and I wasn't the same mother who used to patch things up without question. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside, no words, just a nod. He walked into my living room like it was unfamiliar territory. Maybe because it was. The version of me that lived here wasn't the one he remembered bending over backwards to make his life easier. He sat on the edge of the couch, fidgeting with his hands, the silence between us loud but not hostile. "I've been thinking a lot," he started, "about everything." I said nothing. "Just wait." He continued. "I know I treated you like a burden. I didn't mean to. I thought I was protecting you." I let out a breath, not angered, just tired of the same tired justification. "Protecting me from what?" I asked quietly. "My own home? My own dignity?" He looked down. From discomfort, from the chaos of my life, I didn't know how to balance you in my world. That word, balance, rubbed me wrong. "I didn't ask you to balance me," I said. "I asked you to respect me." His eyes lifted. "I didn't realize what I was taking from you until you took it back." He talked for a long time, about his childhood, about how he'd come to associate adulthood with control, not care, about how the more successful he became, the more he feared anything that reminded him of the struggle we once lived through. I listened because I wanted to, not because I felt obligated. And when he finished, I said something I had never said to him before. "You were my hardest victory, Aaron. I raised you through storms and silence, but somewhere along the way, you mistook my sacrifices for structure, and you built your success on top of me instead of beside me." He didn't deny it, didn't explain it away. He just sat with it. And that silence, that quiet recognition, was more powerful than any apology. But then came the part I didn't expect. "There's something I need to tell you," he said. "I've been in therapy, and it was my counselor who asked me a question I couldn't answer. When was the last time you saw your mother as a person, not just your past?" And I realized I never had. My throat tightened, not out of pain, out of release. Finally, someone else had helped him see what I had long stopped trying to explain. "I can't undo what I did," he said, "but I can start learning who you are now, if you'll let me." I nodded slowly. "I'm not angry anymore, Aaron. I'm just done pretending I wasn't there the whole time." And he nodded back. "I know, and I'm sorry I didn't see you." It wasn't a resolution, but it was real. Aaron began showing up, not with flowers or grand gestures, but with presence. Sometimes he brought coffee, sometimes just time. He came to my baking class one Saturday and sat in the back while I taught a group of teens how to make sweet potato biscuits. When I glanced up and saw him laughing at a joke one of the girls made, something in me softened, not because he was there, but because he was quiet, listening, not leading. He was finally learning how to be with me, not just around me. Later that day, we sat on my small balcony in silence. He looked out at the view of treetops and rooftops and said, "It's peaceful here." I sipped my tea and replied, "It's mine." He nodded, slowly. "I used to think giving you less responsibility was love, but I was really just trying to make space in my life by pushing you out of it." I appreciated the honesty, but I didn't coddle him. I didn't need less responsibility, Aaron. I needed more respect. That landed. I could see it in his posture. The man who once thought power was control now sat humbled by a kind of wisdom he never thought to learn. Then came the part that surprised me. "Monica invited me over," he said. "She said you gave her a future." I turned my head, curious. "And what did you say?" He looked straight at me. "I said she earned what I assumed I deserved." I didn't smile. I didn't pat his hand. I just looked at him and said, "Then you're growing." And he was. Not for me. Not to get something back, but because he finally understood what he had thrown away when he stopped seeing me as human. That night when he left, he didn't hug me like a child reaching for comfort. He hugged me like a man acknowledging a queen. And that, Pi, was the first time in years it actually meant something. Weeks passed, and the pattern continued. Aaron came by more often, never empty-handed, but never with anything flashy, just effort. Sometimes he brought vegetables from the farmer's market, sometimes a book he thought I'd like, and one day a small wind chime he'd seen that reminded him of the porch. Not my new porch, the one he tried to claim, tried to flip, tried to erase. I hung the chime outside and let it sing in the wind. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something close. One afternoon, Monica called and said Aaron had come by the house again. He just wanted to walk through, she said. He looked different this time. Not like he wanted it, like he missed it. I didn't reply immediately. I knew that feeling. The ache of missing something you never truly honored when it was yours. The next Sunday, Aaron invited me to his place. I hadn't been there since before the tension started. I agreed, not out of obligation but out of curiosity. I was no longer afraid to be in his space, because I knew who I was now, and I wouldn't be made small again. His home was neat, well-kept, but missing something. It felt curated, like a showroom, not lived in. He served lunch himself. No housekeeper. No rushing phone calls, just 2 plates, 2 glasses, and his full attention. He said, "I'm thinking about moving." I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" He took a breath. "Because I built all this to prove something, but I don't feel at home in it." That honesty hit deeper than any apology. After lunch, he brought out an envelope. "This isn't paperwork," he said quickly. "It's just something I've written." I opened it and found a letter. No business language, no strategy, just a son writing to a mother, like a man who finally understood the weight of her silence. He wrote about the meals, the nights I stayed up sewing, the mornings he heard me cry in the bathroom, but never asked why. He wrote about realizing, too late, how I had traded my entire youth for his future, and how he almost traded my dignity for his pride. The last line read, "You gave me a home, and I tried to take the roof from over your head. I'm sorry I forgot who built it." I folded the letter and placed it in my purse, not because I needed to hold on to it, but because it belonged with me now. Later, as I left, he walked me to the car. No talk of real estate, no subtle suggestions. Just a hug. This time, I hugged back. And it wasn't heavy. It was clean, finished, but open. That evening, back at my place, I sat on my porch and listened to the wind chime. Monica's daughter was playing hopscotch down the street. Somewhere, a radio played an old Sam Cooke song. And I realized something. I had outlived the version of me who needed to be wanted. I was wanted now, but not for my use, for my presence. And that was the true return. I used to think sacrifice was silent by nature, that being a good mother meant staying quiet, staying steady, and never asking to be seen. But now, after all the years, all the folded towels, all the skipped meals, and ignored dreams, I see it differently. Sacrifice isn't supposed to be invisible. It's supposed to be honored. And respect that has to be earned back by a child who once had it freely given isn't a betrayal. It's a wake-up call. Aaron did wake up eventually, but I had already risen. When I look at my life now, I don't see what I lost. I see what I reclaimed. My home may live under a different roof now, but its roots are still mine. And for the first time in years, I feel rooted again, not by someone else's recognition, but by my own quiet truth. That house was a chapter, not a full story. The story was always me. The warmth in the walls, the rhythm of Sunday meals, the quiet prayers before bed, those were me. I see that now, and I won't ever forget it again. Aaron and I still speak. We visited, we eat, we laugh. But the nature of our bond has changed. He doesn't lead with guilt anymore, and I don't bend out of habit. We meet in the middle now, where grown people should, where respect replaces assumption and presence replaces performance. He's learning. I'm healing. And somewhere between those two paths, we've found something like peace. Not perfection, just peace. The kind that doesn't need everything to be repaired, just recognized. I think about other women like me who gave their youth to build a home, only to be told one day they're no longer useful in it. I think of all the mothers whose value gets boxed up with their furniture, and I hope they know this. Your worth was never in the work, it was in the why. And if they can't see that, you don't have to stay to prove it. You're allowed to leave with your name, your strength, and your story intact. I did. And it saved me. In the quiet of my evenings now, I often sit with a cup of tea and look out the window, not searching for anything, just being. There's a kind of freedom in that stillness that I never knew I was missing. No one's calling me to ask where something is. No one's assuming I'll cook or clean or give up my rest for their convenience. I'm not needed in the way I used to be, and I've learned that's not a loss, it's a release. I gave so much of myself for so long that I forgot how to simply belong to me. Now, I wake up without any weight in my chest. I make choices based on joy, not duty. I spend time with people who see me as more than a caretaker, more than a name on a deed or a title on a birth certificate. I don't regret the years I gave to raising my son. What I regret is not realizing sooner that I was allowed to want something in return, something more than a thank you whispered once a year. I deserved my presence, respect, honor. And when that didn't come, I did the bravest thing I've ever done. I walked away, not in anger, in wisdom. Because sometimes stepping back is the only way to see how much you carried. And sometimes giving the house away is how you finally take your power back. I didn't lose anything. I passed it forward. And I kept my soul in the process. If this story felt close to your heart, if you've ever been made to feel like your time had passed or your presence didn't matter, know this. Your worth is not tied to what you give, but to who you are. Share this story with someone who needs the reminder that leaving with dignity is more powerful than staying in silence. Drop a comment with the moment you chose yourself, and follow for more stories that uplift those whose quiet sacrifices shaped generations. Because sometimes, the most powerful legacy isn't what we leave behind, it's what we refuse to let be forgotten.